In August of 1995, Christopher Meyer went fishing and would never come home again. 8 days after his disappearance, he would be found in a shallow grave. Within a few days of his disappearance, tips and eyewitnesses would lead to an arrest of a convicted child killer. So what happened? I'm Andrew, and this is History's a Disaster. Tonight, we are diving into the murder of 10-year-old Christopher Meyer. This was a pretty big news story in the mid-90s. I believe it went national since it happened in Illinois, and his dad, who had custody, lived in Washington State. I was a teenager when this happened and lived not that far from where this happened. It was all over the news and the radio. It was kind of hard to miss, even if you were an oblivious to everything teen like I was. Now, considering the subject matter of this episode, I'm going to do something I don't normally do and give an explicit content warning concerning violence and sexual assault against children. During the summer of 1995, Christopher was spending the summer with his mother Micah Moulton in the small town of Aroma Park in Kankakee County, Illinois. Micah and Christopher's dad, James, had previously divorced, and he had primary custody of Christopher and his older brother and sister. James and the kids lived in Walla Walla, Washington, so the kids would often spend the summer and holidays in Illinois with Mom. Chris loved to fish and would often hop on his bike with his fishing pole to go down to the single boat launch in Aroma Park on the Kankakee River. He'd meet up with other kids and spend the day out fishing. When he left the house that day, he was wearing blue shorts, a green t-shirt, Chicago Blackhawks tennis shoes, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle underwear. At 4:15, Chris left the dock to return home. He had promised his mom to be home by 5 for dinner. But by 6, when he had not returned home, Micah went out looking for him. Unable to find him and the other kids saying he left hours ago, Micah contacted Kankakee County Sheriff's to report him missing. By 8 p.m., a search was quickly launched. The next day, on August 8th, they found his bike and fishing pole across the river from the dock, hidden in a wooded area. One shoe was also recovered floating in the river. The next day, his other shoe was found 20 miles downriver near the Kankakee County Country Club. On August 12th, more of Christopher's clothes would be found in a gravel parking lot in the Kankakee Area State Park Hunting Area 10. On a path leading down from the parking lot, pieces of his shirt were found on the ground, and a pair of Teenage Ninja Turtle underwear was hung up in some bushes. Witnesses during the search came forward to report a suspicious man lurking in the area prior to this. A description of the man and his car, believed to be a gray or dark blue 1984 Oldsmobile Sierra or something similar, was given to police. A sketch of the suspect was quickly put out, which led to multiple tips coming in and most of them pointing at the same person. One of these tips came in from Richard Hoffman from Bradley, which is a town just a few miles from Aroma Park. The sketch very eerily resembled the face of a man Richard would never forget. It was the face of Timothy Buss. And why would he never forget this shithead's face? Well, for that, we need to go back in time a bit and talk about this shithead. Old Timmy was born in 1967 down in Fort Hood, Texas. His parents and 3 other siblings moved to Kankakee before he went into kindergarten. And in 1973, his mother said fuck it and got the hell out of there, remarried, started a new family, and forgot her first family even existed. So, a real mother of the year type. Feeling rejected, little shithead Timmy would run away from home a lot and had numerous run-ins with law enforcement. He would eventually move in with his aunt in Bradley, Illinois, where he would meet little Tara Sue Hoffman. Tara Sue was 5 years old at the time. Tara was described as an energetic little girl who loved frogs and snakes. On the afternoon of May 21st, 1981, Tara left home to go play with some friends. When her brother Richard came to give her a gift of a painted turtle he caught, she was nowhere to be found. A search was quickly started around the neighborhood. All the parents came out to help to look, and everyone just figured she got lost somewhere. Bradley was a quiet town with nothing bad ever happening. Police would later that evening get involved in the search, helping out in the area she was last known to be in. 5 hours into the search, while going through a wooded area, little Timmy announced he found her hidden in a dump site. When the adults came to the area he was yelling from, they were horrified at what they saw. Little Timmy was carrying Tara's half-naked body. Her face had been badly beaten, with one eye swollen shut, and she had been sexually assaulted with a piece of wood that was still with the girl's body. Some of the searchers were immediately suspicious of the 13-year-old. No one thought he just stumbled upon the body, since her body had been found inside of a barrel that coincidentally would be found to have his bloody palm print on the lid. Witnesses later came forward saying they saw him moving the barrel with a wagon earlier in the day. He was also found to have numerous fresh scratches on his body and a blood stain on his jeans. When he was later questioned by police, his alibi quickly fell apart when no one would back his story. He would be tried and found guilty as an adult. He was sentenced to 25 years and was sent to the Illinois Department of Corrections Joliet Youth Center until his 21st birthday. While he was there, he got in trouble for numerous escape attempts and numerous suicide attempts. While in, he would brag about murdering Tara, and at no point did he ever show any remorse. After his 21st birthday, he was transferred to an adult facility where his juvie record did not follow him. After the transfer, he straightened up, took some classes, and was on his best behavior. He would end up getting paroled in 1993 on good behavior. After his release in 93, he tried returning to the Kankakee area, but after receiving some threats, he dipped off to Sarasota, Florida for a bit. That May, he would return to Illinois and settle in Joliet with his younger brother. Tara's family would not be notified he had been released after serving less than 13 years of his sentence. So, it was a bit of a surprise when Richard saw the face of the man who murdered his sister. And it was even more concerning since it was in connection with the death of another child. Cops were growing suspicious and very interested in Timmy. On August 9th, they attempted to get in contact with him. Members of the Kankakee Police Department and Kankakee County Sheriff's Department arrived at the home of Timothy's dad and stepmom. The stepmom refused to speak with police without an attorney. However, his dad would contact police that afternoon and tell police where he could be found. He was at his brother's apartment in Joliet. When they went there, no one was home, nor was Timmy found at his job. So, they waited and watched the apartment. They saw him come home, but he slipped out a back alley, driving with his lights out to evade the police. At 10 p.m. that night, police got a call from the desk manager at the B&P Motel in Braidwood. A man going by the name Jim Benson had just rented a room, and he sure looked an awful lot like the sketch of the man wanted in Christopher's Disappearance. Shortly after Jim left the office, he was seen dumping a pair of boots into the motel dumpster. Once he was out of sight, Another guest retrieved the boots and put them into a plastic bag to turn them over to Braidwood police later. Kankakee County Deputy Brady Bertrand saw him dump the boots and leave the hotel in a blue or gray Chevy Spectrum. The deputy followed him to the Wilmington Dam and was joined by 4 other officers before approaching Timmy. With nowhere to go, Timmy had to face the police and he got real nervous, walking in circles and not wanting to face them. He tried hiding his face when an officer attempted to take his picture. The officers insisted that he take his car to the sheriff's office, with an escort of course. With his car in the sheriff's parking lot, a towing company brought in similar cars and witnesses from the boat dock were asked to identify the car. Yep, they seriously had a lineup for the car. That afternoon, this shithead gives written consent to search his car. And of course, after finding bloodstains in the trunk, he was quickly arrested. While he was in police custody, 2 Will County Sheriff's deputies searching the Kankakee State Park near Hunting Area 7 found a child's body in a clearing not far from the path to the parking lot in a shallow grave covered by a piece of plywood. They had to use dental records to identify the body as that of Christopher Meyer. He was found naked with 52 stab wounds, mostly to the chest, abs, and back. Some of the wounds were believed to be defensive cuts, meaning Christopher fought his killer. He was also sexually mutilated. His genitals had been cut completely off. No single stab wound was thought to have caused an instant death, and his official cause of death would be listed as multiple stab wounds. Time of death was put as before sunset on August 7th, the day he disappeared. Forensic evidence found in the car would come back to connect Timmy with the murder. Bloodstains and hair found in the car matched Christopher. Soil found on a claw hammer matched soil near where the body was found, and the boots matched the boot print found near the scene. The only thing not found was a fillet knife, believed to be the murder weapon that multiple eyewitnesses reported seeing. During the trial, several eyewitnesses came forward to testify to the events of August 7th and the days following. Jacob, who was just 14, testified at the trial. He went to the boat launch with his friend Paul during the afternoon of August 7th. As he and Paul fished in an area adjacent to the boat dock, he saw Christopher talking to a man. Jacob knew Christopher because he had seen him there before. The man with him had dark hair and a mustache and was wearing a turquoise tank top and cut-off blue jean shorts. Jacob had a previous conversation with this man who had told him he had been born in Aroma Park and had just returned from Florida. He also talked to him about saltwater fishing down there, and he noticed that the man had a tackle box containing a fillet knife and lures that were too big for the Aroma Park area. Jacob was unable to make a positive ID of Timmy in court or at the lineup, but he testified that he was similar to the man he saw with Christopher. 15-year-old Edward testified that around 4 p.m. on August 7th, he was at the boat launch with his friend Dustin and Darren. Ed saw Christopher walk out of the woods on a path leading from the fishing area adjacent to the boat dock. Christopher walked to a car, talked to someone, after which he jogged to the boat ramp to wash mud from his shoes in the river. He then grabbed his bike from a nearby tree. Darren had suggested that Christopher ride his bike into the river, but he refused, saying he had to be home by 4:30. Dustin told him it was only 4:17, but Christopher replied that he had to leave. Meanwhile, the car slowly circled around the parking lot and then drove out of the lot towards Harry's bait shop. Christopher then left, riding out of the parking lot, following the car. On August 10th, Eddie selected Timmy's car from the car lineup at the sheriff's office. Darren's testimony matched Edwards', except that he did not see Christopher talking to anyone. Darren, who was just 12 at the time, however, did see one car in the boat launch parking lot. A gray or dark blue car that appeared to be a 1984 Oldsmobile Sierra. He told police that Timmy's car was similar to the one he saw at the boat launch. In addition, he testified that Christopher rode towards Harry's bait shop when he left the parking lot. Beth testified that she was at the Aroma Park boat launch with her boyfriend, Jason, on August 7th. She saw Christopher pushing his bike and following a man in his late 30s or early 40s. The man wore a dark sleeveless shirt, had a mustache, dark hair, and was smoking a cigarette. Christopher and this man were walking out of the woods on the path leading from the bayou. Beth saw a dark gray four-door car in the parking lot, but was unable to tell Kankakee County sheriffs whether the car she saw at the boat launch was among the cars in the lineup. She was also unable to tell whether the man she saw with Christopher was in the lineup, but testified that it was very possible that Timmy was that man, and it was possible that Timmy's car was the one she saw at the boat launch. Other people saw Timmy or his car in the Aroma Park area around the 7th. Charles testified that in August 95, he lived east of the trestle on Birchwood, and on August 7th, he was driving home from work when he saw a car in the parking area of the park. The car was parked facing him, and there was a man standing behind the car by the open trunk. As Henry drove past the park, he had a side view of the guy. He made eye contact with him when the man turned to look at him. According to Charles, the man had dark wavy hair and was wearing blue jeans and a gray t-shirt. Charles did not notice any facial hair on the man, but he did see a fillet knife in a leather case protruding from the man's back pocket. Charles, who was also a fisherman, explained that it was common to have this type of leather case and fillet knife, which he described as a thin, single-edged, flexible blade. Charles could not remember whether he saw the car and the man when he came home from lunch between 12:30 and 1, or when he returned home from work between 4:30 and 5:30. Charles reported his observation to police on August 9th. On the 10th, he would pick out Timmy's car from the car lineup, and on the 11th, he would identify Timmy as the person he saw. He also made a courtroom ID of Timmy. Bobby testified that at 12:45 on August 7th, she was driving to work on Route 113 when she saw an older model silver blue Spectrum turn in front of her from a dirt road just west of Hunting Area 7 in the Kankakee State Park. At about 9:25 p.m. on August 8th, Bobby was driving on the same route when she saw the same car turn onto Route 113 at the same location. The car did not turn on its headlights for a half a mile. They said the man driving had a mustache. Bobby contacted the police, and after going through the lineup, she identified Timmy's car as the one she saw on the 7th and 8th. She also admitted having worked with Timmy's father at one time, but stated that she was unaware that he had been arrested for Christopher's murder when she contacted police about the car. After this, the defense presented the testimony of 3 witnesses who believed they saw Timothy Buss around the time of Christopher's disappearance. In an effort to show that such eyewitness identifications are unreliable, the defense called witnesses whose testimony indicated that Timmy was not the individual these witnesses saw. Like Kankakee County Deputy Marcia Dillon testified that while she was working at the Search Command Center on August 8th at 6 a.m., she saw a man resembling the sketch. The man drove into the command center parking lot in a blue-gray early 80s model Buick, Chevy, or Oldsmobile. Marcia could not positively identify the driver, and testified that Timothy's car was not the car she saw that morning. Cindy testified that around 1 p.m. on August 8th, she was at a pond a half hour from Kankakee with her 13-year-old son David. A man driving a silver blue Chevy exited his car and began talking to her son. After seeing Timothy's picture in the newspaper, she believed that the man she saw talking to her son was Timothy and contacted the police. Both of them testified that if the man they saw was not Timothy, he was his twin. Neither of them, however, was able to identify the car they saw from the lineup. And to contradict this testimony, Michelle, one of Timmy's neighbors, testified that her children did not wake him up until 10 a.m. on August 8th. In addition, Michelle testified that between 10:30 and 2 p.m. on August 8th, Timothy was with her running errands. Frances testified that she was at a lake near Wilmington with her grandchildren at about 7:30 or 8:30 on August 5th when a man approached her grandson and spoke to him about fishing. He was driving an 80s model dark gray automobile with a dent on the driver's side. She contacted police about the incident after seeing a picture of Timmy on TV. She would testify that she believed the man was Timmy, but Timmy's dad and aunt would testify that he was at his sister's wedding and reception on August 5th from 2 to 10:30. And to rebut Bobby's testimony that she saw Timothy driving near Hunting Area 7 on the 8th, Timothy's grandmother, Alice, testified that Timmy was with her in Kankakee that evening from 6 to 10 p.m. The defense sought to further undermine the idea of him by the state's witnesses by presenting the testimony of witnesses who thought they may have seen Timmy and Christopher together but who were unable to identify defendants at lineups. For example, Thomas testified that on the 7th at around 5:30, he saw a boy and a man fishing on the Kankakee River 50 to 100 yards down from the Aroma Park boat dock. The boy resembled Christopher and the man looked similar to Timmy. However, he could not positively ID anyone in the lineup. Stephen testified that around 4:30 on August 7th, he saw a man and a blonde-haired boy in a car leaving a playground on the Kankakee River. The car was traveling at a high rate of speed, and there was a 20-inch bike in the trunk. Although at first he selected Timothy from a lineup he saw in October, he was unable to positively identify the driver of the car. To show that Timmy was not the only man in Aroma Park to have recently arrived from Florida around the time of Christopher's murder, they presented the testimony of Michael, who said that around noon on August 8th, he talked with a man in Harry's bait shop. The man said that he had just driven to Illinois from Florida. The man was in his late 30s to mid-40s, had black hair and a mustache, and was driving a white compact car. So his defense basically boiled down to, it wasn't me, it was someone who looked like me and drives a similar car to me, but it definitely was not me. Yeah, okay. He would be found guilty of first-degree murder, aggravated kidnapping, and aggravated unlawful restraint. And since there was no mitigating circumstances, he was sentenced to death. His 1999 appeal would be shot down. However, in 2003, before leaving office, Governor George Ryan, another shithead who would end up in prison, put a stop to the death penalty in Illinois, and his sentence would be reduced to life without the possibility of parole. He would later whine and try, pulling some legal bullshit to get his sentence reduced, but the courts weren't having it and his sentence was upheld. In the wake of the tragedy, Micah Moulton, Christopher's mom, and Tara Sue's family would come together and push for change. They would be instrumental in getting laws changed concerning sexual predators, and the community they were being released into would have to be notified of their location and crimes. Families of victims would also be notified of an inmate's release. Timmy, and I really hope he hates being called Timmy because, well, fuck this guy, is currently serving his life sentence in Statesville Correctional Center, a maximum security prison in Joliet, Illinois. He has never confessed to Christopher's murder and still maintains his innocence. And I strongly believe that had it not been for the swift action of the Kankakee County Sheriff's Department, that he would have gone on to be a serial killer. And that's if he wasn't one already. To be classified as a serial killer, you have to kill 3 or more people, with the murders taking place more than a month apart and as separate events. Now, this is all just pure speculation on my part, so take this with a grain of salt, whatever. But there was 2 years between his release and Christopher's murder. And we know he traveled from Aroma Park in Illinois to Sarasota, Florida. That's 2 years and a lot of miles we don't know a whole lot about. Did he really come back to Illinois for family reasons or whatever? Or was he running from something? Another victim, perhaps? I seriously hope not, because that potential victim's family would never get closure. Timmy never took any responsibility for the murder he was convicted of, so I highly doubt he'd confess to a murder only he knew about. He escaped the death sentence thanks to shithead George Ryan, so no telling if he'd have to face it in another state. And that was the murder of Christopher Meyer, a murder committed by a shithead that should have never been released from prison. Thanks for listening, and if you liked the show, please consider leaving a rating or review on your app of choice, and you can reach the show at historyisadisaster@gmail.com with comments or suggestions for future episodes. And follow the show on Facebook or Instagram. And don't forget to share the episode, because sharing is caring, and if there was more caring in the world, maybe history wouldn't be a disaster. Thanks and goodbye.